Welcome to Story Hour, a virtual meetup hosted by Wolf and Heron.
One of the most shocking accusations that had ever been launched at me was, "You lied to get that job." This was coming from my college sweetheart. I was immediately shocked and hurt and confused. I didn't think I'd lied. I was confident. I was optimistic. I was capable. So I didn't think that I had lied. But maybe I did. So I moved to New York as a 20-year-old dancer, and it was the most exciting time in my life. There was so much opportunity and people and places and things to do, and it was so expensive. It was also the most stressful time in my life. Trying to think of how am I going to pay my rent and how am I going to survive on dancing gigs. So the answer was that I wasn't. So a year after plunging into the New York experience, I needed to find a day job. So on a sunny Thursday afternoon in September, I walked into a temp agency with no office experience, just my presence, my wit, and my survival skills. So I sat down with the recruiter and we poured over the listings, and she went through them. Receptionist. If I'm going to give up my precious dance studio time, I need more money. No. How about telephone operator? No. What about office assistant? Okay. Filing, answering phones, writing reports. Sure, I can do that. And then she sighed and told me, well, you need to know spreadsheets. And my heart was pounding out of my chest. And in my head, I was thinking, what are spreadsheets? This is 1992. They did not teach this in school. But I really needed that paycheck. So I said, I can do that. Now, I didn't actually say I knew spreadsheets. I said I can do that. Is that lying? I would tell my kids that that's a lie of omission, but I think I'll save this story for when they're a little older. So with my job ticket in hand, I walked out and I hit the streets. And at the time, they had these computer centers where you could go and rent a terminal by the hour. And they also, for an additional fee that really hurt, you could learn a software program. So I set to work. My sole goal for Monday morning was to know spreadsheets. When I showed up to the office on Monday with my very basic knowledge of Lotus 1-2-3, kind of like Excel, I felt like I was ready to go. It would be weeks before anyone even asked me to open a spreadsheet, more or less flex all of the advanced skills that I spent every single lunch hour teaching myself. But that temp job turned into 5 years at my first financial position, first as financial assistant and then administrator of business operations at a book publisher. So did I lie? It's said that men, when they're applying for a job, will apply if they have 60% of the qualifications, and most women not unless they have 100% of the qualifications. So is it lying to say that you're qualified for a job when you don't have all the specific skills? I don't necessarily think so.
Yay! Unmute to applaud. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Danielle. Your story was just about 4 minutes long. Perfect. Thank you for that, and thank you for being our brave first volunteer. Who will share first? What did Danielle do well? Sarah.
I loved how you started and ended it. I think that starting with kind of this intriguing question about, did you really lie? And then finishing it up with reminding us how sometimes a lie isn't really a lie. It's just a stretching of the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Milo.
So I think that it was a good topic because it's something that we all deal with. So it wasn't something that like we're unfamiliar with, but applying for work generally, and also applying for work that we don't have experience for necessarily. So I think it's a topic that resonates with your audience quite well, and it seems like you had a very simple way of telling the story, and wrapped it up. So it had like the beginning, the introduction, and it had an end to it. So it sounded like it was well composed and well thought out. So I appreciated that it seemed to have been prepared.
I'll raise my own hand and say that for somebody who's coming to something like this for the first time, Danielle, you did a lot of the things that we give people feedback on, that the folks have just mentioned. And additional add, you used physiological descriptions to really bring us into the scene. I think you said that your heart was pounding. So you gave us a little bit of that visceral experience that you were going through. And then another way that you created some real moments for us is that you described things that I could picture, right? You were walking down the street, you're in this city, you're laying the groundwork for something where I can really put you in a time and a place that's very effective when it comes to storytelling, because it's not just ideas, right? You were really going further than that. And so that was definitely very strong for a first time guest. So thank you for being a great example for all of us. Any other comments of what did Danielle do well and she should hold on to? Rob.
Yeah, I really appreciate you kept the theme very, very consistent, and you created a lot of suspense in terms of like what's going to happen next. You didn't tell us right off the bat whether or not, I mean, I didn't know where you were going with this, whether or not you were going to be, you were going to be totally trashed by the job. I thought at one point that you're going to lose your job and it was going to be the worst day of your life. And then it turns out that you ended up, you gave us a really high point where you stayed on the job for five years, and you really, you really went high in the organization. So it was really wonderfully done. I really liked it.
Well, Robert, I'm glad I took you on that journey because that was exactly how I felt.
Okay, so now Danielle has asked us to be brutally honest. And this is not meant to be constructive criticism. It's what should Danielle consider the next time she were to tell this story? What would be something to experiment with or try out differently? Milo and then Molly.
I felt like the story was a little flat. There wasn't any it's like what Robert said, that you didn't really know where it was going. And so it kind of felt like it was just, you were talking about an experience that happened, but it wasn't something that was like an exciting, there wasn't anything that, there was no climax. It was sort of just this story that kind of went through all the end, and then you asked a thoughtful question, but it wasn't demonstrated in the actual story. So if you were to retell the story, I would consider using language or composing it in such a way that there's a crescendo and it kind of hits at a peak where you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you could be like, somebody called me out for my inexperience at work, and I was confronted with the fact that I had to justify what I said during the interview. And kind of leave it at, we're having this meeting and I'm potentially getting fired and we don't know where this is going to go. And then the story is actually about what takes place and how you end up in the end. So but otherwise it was fine. But like I said, it just seemed like it was monotone.
Oh, I like that. Thank you.
Another way to think about that would be, how are you different as a person, Danielle, now that you've had that experience? And is there a more recent moment that you could use as a coda to show how you show up now, or how you view lies or honesty as a result of this experience, or just, interviews? Molly, go ahead.
I'm outside, so I'm sorry if it's very noisy. But one of my favorite parts of your story was when you said, I want, and then you kind of pause and you're like, I need. And that, even in that inflection in your voice, you could feel that desperation almost. And I think it's interesting, this concept of the difference between want and need and what makes us lie. And so I feel like something you could experiment with is weaving in that desperation a bit more, and really making me feel that throughout, instead of just that one moment. because that's really powerful. And I think is no matter the story is really relatable when it comes to like reasons we lie, even if they're small lies, you know?
That's awesome. Thank you.
And then John, I think you had your hand up as well, right?
Yeah. I would have been interested in knowing more about like what you experienced internally when your partner accused you of lying. Did you feel blindsided by it? Or when you were actually in that interview, did you feel a great deal of tension as you contemplated kind of skirting on the edge of this half-truth? Is it honest? Is it dishonest to say that you can do this thing that you're not trained to do? But yeah, like just what did you experience in your body, in your heart, and emotionally? And then a little bit more detail about also cognitively, like how you reasoned through it, how you rationalized it, would have added an interesting depth to the story, I think.
Yeah. One other thing that I would add, Danielle, is like you did have an interesting opening in that you went to this conversation with your partner and then you went back to say, you know, I was this age, I was moving or was in New York City or moving to New York, but you didn't actually start with that you lied to get that job. You set it up with some language that I don't actually remember because it wasn't that compelling. But imagine if you opened with, you lied to get that job.
That's so funny you say that because I had planned to do that and then this happened.
Yeah, I think, you know, so we as a company don't really recommend memorizing entire stories because I think it pulls some of your ability to be present out of that. And at the same time, we do really, really recommend memorizing first and last sentences or phrases because they are sometimes, it's tempting to segue your way in and your way out. And you don't really need to. And a way to give yourself permission to just begin and then end without saying thank you is to really know what your beginning and your ending is. So I would encourage you to, you know, trust your instinct in terms of the writing of it and then find a way to have that play out when you go to share the story. Okay. Awesome. Another applause for Danielle.
Visit wolfandheron.com to find out more about our story hours.